All right, welcome to Creatively Speaking with Lawrence Mayfield. I will be the host of a podcast series that I'm going to start where I'm going to interview various creative people that I come across that I am intrigued and I want to pick their brain about their process, their goals, and what their passion is, and kind of get some perspective on how they approach that said endeavor. And so let's start off with, I guess, more in depth of why I wanted to do this. I for several years I wanted to do this, and I know that everybody and their mom is doing podcasts these days, but this is something that I really wanted to just kind of dive into, and I have the equipment and I've had it for a while, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk to various people and mainly get them out of contexts where there's a lot going on. And when I'm on open mics, or if I'm at a concert or just anywhere, there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of overstimulation, and it seems like it's hard these days to actually have one-on-ones. Now, this first episode will be a solo, and I just wanted to do that because I wanted to kind of lay out the reasoning that I have for this thing, and what the theme is and what the goal is and whatnot. But I've just been itching to get people out of those settings, because I feel like there's a lot of things going on when people are, especially musicians is what I'm more familiar with. There's always distractions when you're at, a bar for an open mic or something. There's your tabs open. There's a lady you want to talk to. There's, you're thinking about, you're anxious. You got a new song, you want to share. You're not sure how it's going to go. And you're thinking about all these things. And then everybody, all the while, you're talking to, your fellow musicians and your friends, and you're kind of you're kind of all over the place. I feel like there's a lot going on, and my goal is to bring people out of those moments and then into a one-on-one where we're just sitting here and we're talking about we're diving into the specifics of what they want to get out of their creative pursuit. And I guess, the name for the podcast, it's not really something I necessarily need to, go into, but I think the names in general for musicians and creative people, they are kind of important. And I think that, this is not my real name. This is my musician name. I'm not trying to hide any information. This is just an effort for me to separate the two identities, And it's not it's not an artistic thing. It's more of a personal thing for me. And I hope to have this conversation with various other musicians later down the line with this series, and kind of getting into there are some musicians I know locally that have stage names, and they go by monikers or whatever. And I chose to give myself a different last name to disassociate with my that personal identity I have in my regular life and my musician creative stuff. It's a different. I want those two to be separate, and it's not like I wanted it to be super fancy name Larry Makes Beats or something. It's got to be, I don't know. I wanted it to be unassuming and just sort of low key and kind of pleasant. I don't know. Mayfield sounds kind of like a nice name, and I don't know how I stumbled across it. I guess I was just looking on the internet, I think, at one point, and I was looking for names that I would like. If I had, the patience to do the legal transition of a name, then I would probably do that. But I don't really have the patience to go through all that paperwork to change my name officially. But I was looking for a name that if I chose this name, I would actually feel good about actually changing it to that. Now I'm not going to go into, again, I'm not going to go into the details of like exactly why that is. I've chosen to separate those two and why I prefer to go by Lawrence Mayfield over my actual name. But you know, I mean, if it was a creative, I guess more of a creative leaning reasoning, then I would have maybe elaborated more. But it's very personal, and I'm not really trying to get into the necessarily the personal aspect of it too much. With this podcast, this sort of recorded monologue thing, and I wanted to like maybe touch on. I mean, it's not like I'm having a genius lyric interview. If you know what that is, it's an application or a website that sort of compiles all the lyrics of songs, and people can write their sort of comments. It's like a kind of tailored to I don't know. It has like a Billboard 50. It kind of keeps a pulse on what's hot in music right now. But it's mostly about lyrics and stuff like that. And so you can go on there and you can leave comments, have an account where people are saying what their interpretation is or things like that. And I do enjoy the app very much. This is not a plug for Genius at all. It's not a plug, but I'm just kind of throwing out like this is not me having like a because musicians would have interviews on this sort of platform, and they would explain their lyrics and stuff like that. I'm not trying to have a whole explanation of my history as a musician and like where I was coming from as a writer, but I feel like that's kind of part of the deal here. Like I feel like in this solo episode, being that I'm going to be the host and I'm going to be interviewing all these people, I have to kind of like get this out of the way because the focus will be on them going forward and not, I'm going to try and make an emphasis to get the questions on them and get them to get their perspective. But yeah, so when I'm trying to remember when I started playing music, and I guess I started when I was like 14, 13. Got my first guitar. It was nylon strings. It was like a little thing that my uncle gave me back when I was growing up in Norway, and I remember, it was like a more ideal starting guitar because it was like softer strings. Nylon was softer than steel string guitars, acoustic guitars. And it wasn't as rough on the hands. But the neck was wider, so it was also something like starting with that and then transitioning to, steel string acoustic guitars. That was like probably not the most comfortable transition, and I had a hard time probably with that, but I don't really remember a whole lot of how I got comfortable with that. I mean, I still have weird, depending on the guitar and the neck and how, not all necks are the same. They're kind of like different as a comfort thing. But yeah, no, I started playing that guitar quite a bit. And, I mean, off and on, I was distracted with, school and video games and and friends and all that. And so I wasn't pursuing music as aggressively as I am now. But I think it was the seed had been planted, and then it kind of just was fostered over time through various, interactions I had with people. And, I think like I grew up on, like 80s, pop, and my mom listened to a lot of glam rock, pop from the 80s. She was an 80s child for sure. And my uncle had a very eclectic sort of taste. He would have like pretty much everything. I think he was more pop oriented. I think it was a lot of pop. I think it was a lot of that. My stepdad listened to a lot of. He kind of introduced me to like the more rock stuff, more alternative stuff. He put me onto the Beatles, and I've had pretty much the average sort of array of music that I've been exposed to. It's not any different than um, than the next person that's trying to pursue music. And but like I think that the tastes, over time as you get older, they kind of like, I don't know, they kind of, I don't want to say mature, but they definitely they change, or maybe they, you start experimenting with the taste, and it's not always like dependent on your peers, and it's not only based on nostalgia and what you grew up on. It's also, you know, maybe finding a genre or a style that you are drawn to for whatever reason. And I mean, I did like rock music and stuff like that when I was younger, and that was kind of like what was cool in the clique, in the group of people that I hung out with. But then as I, like, deep down, I feel like I had an affinity for like soul and R&B stuff, and Amy Winehouse and like Adele, and I had more of like a draw to that for some reason. I don't know what it was. I think it was just, I don't know. It was just maybe like the delicate like nature and like the intensity that it could pull at times without having to be as loud. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like emotionally intense. Like it was, I don't know, whatever. If Adele like would belt out like a lyric, and it was just, you could feel it, as opposed to just some shredding solo and like breakdowns or something in a metal song. There's different strengths and weaknesses to genres, and maybe I'll kind of elaborate on that thought that I have. But that was like deep down, deeply rooted what I felt drawn to, and I never really like expressed that to a lot of people when I was younger, because I think that it was more, kind of follow what everybody else listens to, and then that was cool, and it was more fun to have music that everybody could kind of share, that everybody liked, instead of just being like, hey, what about this? And then everybody's like, I don't know about that. But yeah, no, I've been kind of returning to that, and these days, and I've been just trying to like pull inspiration from older stuff that I did listen to, that I actually, return to, and I feel like is still consistently good today, and I don't like cringe at it. It's not like silly, something like, why did I even listen to that? Like I have those moments, but then, there is redeemable aspects of a lot of the stuff that I've listened to when I was younger. I'm not dismissing all of it. It's just, I feel like I've kind of grown out of a lot of stuff. And that again, I can still find inspiration in stuff that I grew up on. Like, name bands like, I don't know. Like, I grew up on Rise Against and Green Day. And so there was like a punk thing I had when I was a kid, and that says a lot. And I was very much into the alternative. And I think that, because I listened to like writers and musicians like Timothy McElrath, which is the vocalist from Rise Against, I always, like, like I was a kid from the suburbs. I wanted to rock, okay? But, I still return to, writers like that, and I'm still, I'm still very, I shouldn't say the word impressed. I do think that there's a lot of merit in the writing that McElrath has done. And his emotional delivery was very intense. Like, he could be very, like, he was kind of a scream, like, projecting vocalist, and that always kind of stuck with me, and that's like, kind of brushed off on me as a vocalist as I am today, and carving out, my, like, I guess, approach to that. And but I never, like different genres will give me different things. Like, I'll pick up on, like the soul stuff and the R&B stuff. I'll get more technical with the chords and everything. I know I can't sing clean. That's never been me. So I know that, like, when I listen to Adele, I can't sing like a clean vocal. Like, I can only be, abrasive and kind of like rougher, And I haven't recorded anything yet, so I can't have, I can't share where that is. But I hope, like, very soon that I'm going to be able to. I'm working on, like, getting familiarized with recording software and getting production side of things down, and like putting some songs together. But I wanted to do this um, while all of this is happening because I feel like it's going to help me as a writer get better and just kind of reflect on my goals and have it sort of documented, recorded, sort of. And like if we if we keep doing this and there's a series where I'm actually having valuable conversations and maybe like there's new people that I can draw into the recording aspect at some point, like maybe there's a pianist or there's a percussionist that I can borrow for the said songs that I have. I have ideas and I have lots of songs. I just don't know how to like necessarily put them all together at the moment. I have to like sit down and it's a whole like recording and production is a completely different process than writing. And writing is way more casual and like it's not always fun necessarily, but it's not as labor intensive I feel like at times than recording and production. I think those two, it feels like you're sitting in a cubicle and you have to kind of like, be going through all these like tracks and you have to do the different takes, over and over again until you get it to where you want it. So there's a lot of like trial and error and like learning curve things going on with that. And so that's what's holding me up from getting like, I really care about the songs that I've been writing and the quality of them. And I'm trying to forever improve on these things. And I mean, it's like, I think that writing is more of a skill than people think it is. I think that people that aren't really like musically inclined, they never found the interest in pursuing it. The people that do it, they still, I think there's maybe a misconception about writing as a, like, just writing in general. Like, I mean, what it is, like what, it's like people think it's like a talent thing. And talent, the word talent, I mean, I really do briefly want to touch on that word. It's like people will throw that word around like it doesn't have any weight to it, but it has a lot of weight to it, right? I mean, I've never claimed that I had an innate talent. And I'm not trying to be humble with that. I'm trying to be like respectful of the people who actually do have talent, because I know that it takes away from the efforts that I've put forth in getting to where I am as a musician. I mean, again, I cannot demonstrate it at the moment, but I've worked really hard on a lot of the aspects of my musicianship. Whether it be my vocals, and God only knows the vocals are the biggest thing for me personally. Which again, it's that and my like technical ability, like as far as guitar chord vocabulary, scales, lead, just being mindful of like the approach to melody and like how you can sing something, like different angles you can come at it from on a verse or chorus, all these little elements, like these things, like there's hours and years of time that I've spent trying to cultivate, my songwriting and get it to where it is. It's not a talent that I have. It's a skill that I've learned, and it's not a skill that necessarily returns in payment, but it is, I guess it's return payment in for your soul, I guess, right, as it were. But it definitely helps you like work through things. But I think people have said that like a few times, I recall, and I didn't really appreciate. I mean, I appreciate where it comes from. It's like a sort of like, hey, you sound really good, and I would like that more than somebody saying you have talent, because talent, I do not have talent in this stuff. Like I've heard people with talent, a person with talent in music, and it is somebody who just, they haven't been trained in it, but they sing like, like they were meant to, they were born to sing, they perform like they were born to perform. And passion and talent are two different things, it's, and I do have a passion for it. I think I have sort of goals in mind of like, well, where I want it to go. I don't want it to be like necessarily like too big, but not too small. I want it to go somewhere meaningful, you know. Every musician wants their creative endeavor to go somewhere meaningful with some kind of return, not only on like an emotional level, but like on a financial, like success level, maybe. But the road to that is a hard-earned one, I think. I think a lot of the people that, I don't know, I've listened to interviews of musicians that I've had some interest in, and not to really like go into like names of all of them, but like, you know, I've heard like Ray LaMontagne, and he had this old interview, and it was just, you know, and then Chris Stapleton had like an interview with Rogan or something. And that one was kind of, I don't know. There's questioning can be a little bit different quality at times, but I still try to pull something meaningful from, you know, the little snippets that I catch every now and then. It's very clear to me that you know, a lot of these Ray LaMontagne, Chris Stapleton, you know, whoever it is, if there's somewhere of any sort of like measurable success, it's probably largely due to them, you know, being as aggressive about their, you know, their content and making it, you know, and being consistent and sort of like being on it. And I strive to do that. I mean, Stapleton, I think, you know, I've had conversations with some of my musician acquaintances, and they've told me, like, you know, how many songs have you written? And I never really, like, I don't know. I mean, it's not like a question. The number doesn't matter. I think it's more of a, you know, you keep writing and you keep doing it until you kind of like catch people's attention. And it's validated for its qualities, not from yourself, but from an audience that actually can understand what you're trying to convey. I think that, you know, I've had these conversations a lot with people, and this was like in the early days, I was always trying to, like, you know, get the attention of the audience. And you know, I learned projecting my voice and being more like, you know, tapping into that McElrath sort of. And then Tyler Childers, you know, I've listened to him, and, you know, I liked his songwriting, and he's got, you know, strong vocal, emotional draw. And there's a lot of vocalists like that, you know. Even Adele, I think I read something about how she said, like, she had different vocalists that she looked to that gave her different sort of aspects of vocalist angles, you know, like the emotion and the control, you know, and things like that. And so I'm picking up on little things like that. I never took a course in vocal training or, you know, officially paid for any courses. I just kind of picked up little things like a buffet, you know, of ideas. And I was like, okay, well, I like that. I like this. I'm going to throw it all in the mixing pot and then make something in the blender and just kind of make it into something and see what happens, you know, and make it my own and call that my thing, I guess. So it's kind of like a monster in some sense at times, but I was always trying to, like, you know, grab people's attention, you know, and I was, you know, I ended up playing up a lot of bars when I was younger, and I, you know, gigging and my attitude on that has changed dramatically from when I was younger. I used to think that was the measure of success, is like how many gigs you have, but I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think that what's more valuable, as for me personally, as a writer and as a musician, I'm trying to be, is to try to get the music crafted to a point where I'm happy with. I could say, like, honestly and sincerely that I can understand what's being done and somebody else can understand that, you know. Now, I know that when that sounds like, I mean, it's like, what does that even mean? You know, like, he just said some, like, very, I don't know, just dead end kind of statement. But it's like, to make something make sense to other people than yourself is the main thing with music in my mind. And it's easier said than done, because a lot of times you're either overdoing something or you're underdoing it, you know. You're not giving it enough flair, and you're giving it too much flair, you know. There's this balancing thing. And I think I mean, I'm not going to say the success, but like you know you have something when you can grab the attention of a room of people that are thoroughly like, enjoying, their conversation with somebody else, and you can draw them into whatever you're doing in the corner. If you're able to do that, then you got something, I think, and I've had that moment maybe a couple times in my, if you want to call it music career, but I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm just like, I'm trying not to come across as like, no, my stuff is amazing. Like, I mean, I'm just trying really hard. That's it. I'm trying to really evaluate and review the work that I'm putting out, and trying to like see if like, it's not the audience's responsibility to give you their attention. It's your responsibility to figure out how to get it, is my whole theory, my philosophy on performing and stuff like that. You just got to play better. You got to be better. And I know that comes across as like maybe a little rough, but it's, I mean, and, not every, again, like the difference between, doing your thing and not, pandering to everybody and what they expect, what do you think they're expecting to hear, versus like making something that you're confident in, that you believe in, that has some kind of like quality or qualities that can be maybe, heard in a stranger. That's what I've always try to do. And, people telling me things like, oh my God, you're so talented. Like, I mean, don't say that, first of all. Like, I've tried really hard to work on this. It's not talent. It's just me going over the same concept and the same thing hundreds of times and trying to, sculpt it into something that makes sense to other people than myself in my apartment, So, but I appreciate the sort of sentiment that follows that. I mean, I always say, like, I really appreciate that, and I'm very appreciative. But I'm always deep down, like, trying to, like, keep that in check, the humility, and not trying to come across as an asshat, But I mean, speaking on the subject of like writing versus performing, and this is something, I mean, a lot of these thoughts could very well end up in a lot of like the interviews, but this is, from my own perspective, and I may, like, I won't have time for all the thoughts that I've had about the various things tied to, music as a creative endeavor. But one of the things is, writing versus performing, and the importance of, like, that I found personally, and this is my perspective and my IMO, okay? But when I gigged, it threw me into this whirlwind of stress and like pressure, and I just didn't deal with it very well. It was like, I don't know, I was psyching myself out. I thought to myself, like, I have to make my songs as good as I can make them. And if I'm not getting people's attention, it's because the songs are lacking in quality. And in some regards, and I won't have anybody tell me otherwise, I know deep down that it was the quality of the songs that was lacking. But it was also a combination of that, and then maybe, I was trying new stuff all the time. I was putting new material together that I wasn't completely, confident with. And, that's another topic entirely. Confidence and anxiety tied to, performance. I mean, that's another thing entirely. But staying on the point of writing and performing, that, I always stressed out, and I always put together these, like, these gigs that I would get, some change for, but it wasn't, the trade-off wasn't there. Like, I recognized, I mean, the only positive thing I could argue that I was taking from it was that I was evaluating the quality of the songs while I was practicing them, right? So while I was going through my songs, I was like constantly recording them and then doing like a take on the set list, and then I'd be like going through the set and I was like, I don't like that. That doesn't make any sense. What is that? a lot of like very harsh criticisms, but not like, just unreasonable. Because I know that like I've learned to be more fair with myself as a critic of my own content, and I do that because like I don't know, everybody's threshold will be different on this, but for me, like I know that if I am gonna put it like as a recording and I'm eventually, and this is gonna be a song in my like sort of repertoire that I want to like actually return to and put into like an EP or an album or a single or whatever, then I got to be sure that all the little bells and whistles are making sense to me. Like that means the key, that means especially the key, because that determines vocals, right? Like, is it going to be the right amount of mileage I'm going to need to do what I need to do vocally to make it, engaging for a listener, and also where I feel like I'm getting the point across? Or is it going to be flat? Is it going to be too high? And God only knows. Again, vocals are the most tough thing, for me at least, as a writer, and to just try to make it as interesting as I can make it for a listener. Like, it's because people, I think they usually expect. I mean, it's all speculation. I mean, I haven't talked to enough people to really like get this sort of sense for if this thought is like, accurate or not. But whether or not people really are, they're gauging a good vocalist based on like how commercial they sound. There is like a clean commercial sound, like, I don't know, like take Justin Bieber, and I'm not bashing on him. I mean, like I've been listening to some of his stuff recently. He's a very like consistent musician, and very like he goes in the studio and he gets his thing done, and I respect that. And he has very good, he's been in the game for so long, and he's lives and breathes music. I mean, that guy, like, I don't need to like toot his horn or anything, but he has that commercial voice where it's like, it's clean. He knows how to control it. He can do like falsettos, and there's little like, he can do like a high note like in the vocal, and then like break back down to like his soulful sort of, lower register or whatever. And that's all to say that, that's what I had to evaluate and sort of reflect on when I was like practicing my sets, because I was record them and I listen to them, and I really like kind of think about how this is coming across, and like, and if I demonstrated the set and then it didn't get a satisfactory response, that was because of something. Like, I mean, in my head I was like, well, we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to kind of approach things differently. We need to like reevaluate how I'm doing A, B, and C. So it really got me stressed out, and I think I gave up on gigging, and I started telling myself, once I realized like that was the most valuable sort of takeaway from it. Having a live audience was great. That feedback at times can be betraying to a musician. Because especially when you're young and you're kind of going out and you're doing music for the first time, I was performing like pretty much always alone. I don't really recall any time I actually had any like backup arrangement with anybody doing any other instrument really. A lot of the gigs I just did alone, and I was on my guitar, and then I would try to do gimmicks like a kick drum thing, and then my vocals, and that's about it. Guitar, vocals, and kick drum. And then I would do maybe a looper if I got really, weird with it, trying to do like a rhythm, and then I would do lead. One-man band type thing. So the feedback thing is another element to why performing live was kind of, I don't know, it was learning moments. It was like I almost felt like at times, and this is again more speculation on my part, and I haven't really talked to people, but I don't really think I need to. I have this gut feeling that I'm kind of right in my hunch. I think that people would rather be I don't know. They were like, they'll be nice and they'll tell you like it was good, or they'll clap, rather than come up to you and tell you like, hey, that was not really good. There isn't a lot of that in music, and like, and I was like, you would perform your songs, and I had a lot of like, I don't know, anxiety, I guess, when I played. At first I would start, but I would get into it eventually, because I would have 3-hour sets where I would just play, a bunch of stuff, and I would get more comfortable, I guess, with the audience. But over time, I kind of learned that like an audience's lack of engagement, I mean, there's different things, right? Like, your performance and the quality of your stuff, and yeah, just, I mean, there's different things going on. I'm not going to chalk it up to one thing, but I took it as like a way to reevaluate my stuff. If I wasn't getting the reaction I wanted, it's probably because of reasons. But it wasn't always that. I mean, again, like, I feel like the money aspect kind of like poisoned the well, and it distracted from any little amount of money compensation actually kind of ruins the music for me at times, I feel like. Which makes me think, like, whether or not, even if like hypothetically I were to get some sort of record deal, not that I would want to, I think that that's like the biggest trap for a young musician these days, arguably, to go to like, record labels, big ones, and then think that, I mean, they'll make you some money if you're like hot right now on the styles right now, which are like hip hop, and I mean, always pop, but hip hop is like dominating the music industry right now, for whatever reason. I don't really know, but country hop. I mean, hip hop is bled into country, and I mean, in the production side of things, you can hear it, and just imagine if you got into that, and then like, they're taking pretty much, I don't know what the cut is, but they're taking a lot of your money, and they're telling you to, here's your 6 pennies. Thanks for the music. But I mean, there's also the part about them having to promote it. Oh yeah, and then there's raining a little bit. Sorry, but yeah, it's just, I mean, it's not just a one-sided thing necessarily, but I think about that sometimes, and how like maybe like the money, like any measure of success that I even achieve, if there's any to be had, it could end up ruining the music. I mean, it's ruined musicians before. I mean, it's kind of like you don't have to dig very much to find the musicians that it's done it to. It doesn't really make musicians necessary. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's the thought that like you want people to share that experience and relate like an experience, like an emotion that is shared, with people, and you want people to feel that. And then making sounds and like, frequencies in the guitar or in your instrument is like apparently this way that we do it, right? But if the money can ruin something so like sort of pure, and like the intentions are pure, but then it ruins it and kind of spoils it, it's kind of like it's another fear, I guess, I have in a little bit of ways. It's like, not that, again, like, I don't have any delusions about like the level at which I'm at. Like, I don't know the extent, like, I don't know exactly how far the music could go. I mean, the times are, I don't know, the times are the times. They're always different. They always have their challenges, right? So right now we're facing various different things, like AI and algorithms that are almost seemingly arbitrary. But that's a very big topic that I have very strong feelings about. But as far as like the writing and the performing, the performance, you want you need the feedback. And I'm not saying you need it from musicians. I'm saying you want it from like people you don't know. I think I found the most value, and I'm not trying to devalue the feedback that I've gotten from musicians, but I think it's always more of like bias at times. But with strangers, I feel like it's more of an accurate assessment because their lack of interest or their, enthusiasm can be an indicator of, I think, in some ways, not always. I mean, again, it depends. It really does. I mean, I don't know. I've tried to get a more, I don't know. I've tried to get more better at reading crowds, but I don't really, again, like when I'm playing some of the songs at open mics, they're so new, the songs, that I'm literally reading word for word, and, the 7 times that I practiced that song or something. And I'm trying to like accurately like deliver that song exactly how I put it together, how I, and listen to it on drives to work or whatever, and trying to like make it as accurate as I can. But so I think that writing is more important for me personally because like I think it just, me telling myself by the end of it that I just had too many there's not the bad gigs, it was just the gigs themselves. It was a stressful experience where I was like, things weren't the way I wanted them to be, and I always like, I think that all that stuff will come in time, is my theory. Like, if you focus on your writing and you become, your material is well-rounded and solid, and then you get to a point where you put it out in the world and then it has some sort of traction, then all those other things will come, I think to take that approach of writing first versus performing was a big step for me personally in becoming just better at being a musician. And again, I'm not saying this is my own perspective. I'm like, this is where I'm coming from. Other people may have their own approach, and maybe performing is a better way for them to review their stuff. But for me, I had sort of my fill of that, and I got what I needed from it, to know the motivations that it gave me to be better, and sort of like the, it checked me a little bit, but I think it was distracting at the end, and it pulled me away from like really focusing on how I wanted to put my songs together, and no pressure, because I wanted no pressure on my music, and I wanted to be able to just like put it together in my time and then present it and then see how people feel about it, if they're picking up what I'm putting down, as it were. But all that being said, I feel like this is a good spot to close this first little episode introductory to Creatively Speaking with your host, Lawrence Mayfield. And I appreciate you guys for popping in, listening to the thoughts. Let me know what you think. I will put this on my YouTube, and I think maybe somehow on some other platforms. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this. We're going to have to figure it out as we go. But my goal is to maybe have some engagement from people and then like hear their ideas. If you have a comment, leave it on the YouTube upload. Share a thought. And yeah, we will be returning monthly with this series. I have a guest that I have in mind for July, and I will be putting some questions together for him. And he is a musician, songwriter, and I'm very excited to have him on the new series, Creatively Speaking. So thank you for listening.